For this cloth mask tutorial, you will need scissors or a rotary cutter, a ruler, all-purpose sewing thread, straight pins, 1.4 meters or 1.5 yards of cotton twill tape, and 2 pieces of cotton fabric measuring 6 inches by 9 inches. Begin by laying your 2 pieces with right sides facing each other, and you'll stitch along the top and bottom edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Set your sewing machine to a straight stitch at 2.5 or 3 millimeters in length and begin to sew your top and bottom edge pieces. If you're making multiple masks, you can use a method where you stack the pieces behind each other and stitch them all in one long chain and clip the threads afterwards. Do make sure that you are backstitching at the beginning and end of each new seam. Make sure that you're choosing 2 contrasting fabrics so it's easy to identify which is the front and which is the back of the mask. Now that we've got our top and bottom edges stitched together, flip it right side out so that you can press the seams open. I like to start with the seams slightly offset. This allows you to open up the seam and get that nice and flat before you set your edges flush to press the top and bottom edge. Try not to move the iron around too much as you're pressing. Just place it up and down for a few seconds each time. And now you can get your edges nice and flush and press those. This allows the mask to sit nice and flat. And now it's time to press in the pleats, starting about 1 inch from the top edge and going about 1/4 of an inch deep. We'll make a small pleat all the way across the mask. Press it the same way that you did the top and bottom edges, holding down for a second or 2 over each area of the fabric. You'll make the second pleat about 1/4 of an inch deep, 1/4 of an inch below the first pleat in the mask. That way, the second pleat sits flush below the edge of the first pleat. And you'll want to press that as well. Repeat the process on the third and final pleat of the mask. If you're making a smaller mask, you may only want to do 2 pleats, as 3 pleats can start to get a little bit too crowded. This mask will fit an average adult face, and masks should be worn by anyone who's making any essential trips out of the house. If you're making a batch of masks, you may want to do all of your pleats at once, as long as you have enough pins. Pin the pleats in place so that they hold their shape before you bring them over to the sewing machine. Stitch the pleats in place with about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, removing pins as you go. It's very important not to sew over your pins. Go nice and slow over your pleats so that you're not stressing out your machine. And backstitch at the beginning and end. Give everything a quick press just to get the pleats nice and flat. Now we're going to trim the edges of our seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch. This is going to be helpful when we're putting on the twill tape, as it's going to allow the twill tape to come over the area that's already been stitched and make it extra secure. If you don't have a rotary cutter, you can do this step with scissors. Now we're going to take our 2 pieces of twill tape that are each 3/4 of a yard long. We're going to pin them in place at the midpoint of the mask and the twill tape, with the twill tape overlapping evenly on either side of the top and bottom of the mask. This is over the seam that we just clipped. You can press the twill tape in half if you find it's too difficult to pin it, but after you've done a few, it's pretty easy to do without pressing it first. Repeat the process with the other tab on the other side of the mask. We're pinning perpendicular here. Normally you would want to, we're pinning parallel here, not perpendicular, which is normally what you wouldn't want to do. But in this case, it allows you to get the twill tape nice and flat against the edge of the mask, and it makes the pins easier to remove as you're sewing if you put the head of the pin facing yourself as you sew. We're also marking out 4 inches from the top and bottom of each edge of the tabs, because that's as far as we're going to straight stitch when we bring this over to the machine. This makes the tabs nice and flat so that they tie easily and sit evenly against the edge of your face. And repeat that same 4 inches from the top and bottom on the other tab. This also keeps the twill tape folded in half really nicely so that it's easier to sew. And you're bringing that back over to your machine. Your seam allowance on this is going to be butt right up against the open edge of the twill tape. You'll want to go nice and slow so that you make sure that you're not veering off the edge or going too far in. And you're back stitching at the beginning and end because these seams won't get covered over by any other stitching. So you want to make sure that the stitches are nice and secure. And remove the pins as you go. Working nice and slow over the pleats. And stopping at the edge of that 4-inch mark that we put the pin in before, and backstitching again so that it's nice and secure. Repeat the process on the other tab, and we're on to the last step. For this step, you're going to use what's called a 3-step zigzag. I like to use 2 millimeters in length and 7 millimeters in width. That way it covers over the entire width of the twill tape. Put a back stitch at the beginning to secure, and then zigzag over the twill tape just from the top edge to the bottom edge of the mask. This is going to help keep everything nice and flat and very secure. These masks are going to be worn and washed quite regularly, and we want them to be as sturdy as possible. Repeat this on the other side of your mask. The final step, we're going back to a straight stitch, folding over the end of each tab about 1/4 of an inch, and then a second fold another 1/4 of an inch. and just straight stitching right through the hem of that tab. Backstitching at the beginning and end as always. And you can do this with all 4 tabs. And you can chain the tabs together so that you just have to cut the threads in between and not waste thread each time. All 4 tabs are done, and the thread just needs to be clipped in between them because we backstitched at the beginning and end of each tab. Now all that's left is to clip the remaining threads on the rest of the mask, which I'm doing here at hyper speed. I'm not quite this quick. And now I'm going to show you how to put your mask on. You want to fan out the pleats at the middle of the mask so that it has lots of room to go from the bridge of your nose up under your chin. And you want to tie the top tabs over your ears. If you're wearing a ponytail, it's good to put it over your ponytail and put the bottom tabs under your ponytail, making sure that the mask bottom edge comes down under your chin. You want to tie them securely and tightly, but so that they're still comfortable. And that's it.